Good morning, everybody. It's been a very long, busy, and I think successful summer for Reform UK. We didn't go to the south of France this year. We launched our 6-week crime campaign. And I was very, very pleased that we got some senior figures from the world of policing, the prison service, to come and join the party, to set up a task force so we can get legislation planned and ready in time. What was also interesting was there were many in Westminster, in politics and the media, who thought, well, crime's not really a problem because some surveys say that crime is falling. Well, that's certainly not how most people in the country feel. And certainly our advocacy of zero tolerance, particularly for areas like shoplifting, really caught the mood of the country. And plus our insistence on stop and search, which interestingly is popular across all sections of society, regardless whether you're on the left, the centre, or the right of politics. Sadly, at the same time, free speech has been genuinely under attack, and I think the final implementation of what was well-intentioned legislation, frankly, is quite chilling. And that allows the public now to believe that we're living in a world of two-tier policing and sentencing. And indeed, if you just look at it, you know, if you're a childminder who says something deeply intolerant and wrong, but only once, ever, it's a long prison sentence. And even if you're a foreign national arriving at Heathrow Airport, well, if you've said something the authorities don't like, you may well be arrested by 5 armed officers. And if you don't think it's two-tier, well, have a think about this. On Friday, there were some very explicit threats posted on TikTok for me to be killed. Pretty sick in the light of what happened to Charlie Kirk, but quite explicit. Been told this morning by the Metropolitan Police that those posts don't meet the threshold for further action. So I think we are, you know, without doubt, living in a two-tier country. It is extraordinary. The rest of the summer was dominated for us by the weekly by-elections that happen every Thursday, and those that study these things will see we're winning more and more seats and doing particularly well against the Labour Party in some parts of the country where they've been strong ever since the end of the First World War. And of course, this all culminated in our conference in Birmingham 2 weeks ago, which was upbeat, optimistic, full of energy, and the party is in good shape. But I did say, there were 2 things I said in particular at the conference. The first was that I thought this government and the British economy were in far deeper trouble than most people realised, and that I did not believe the government would last a full 4 years, thinking myself that a general election by 2027 was entirely possible. It seems to me, given events of the last week, it could happen even more quickly than that, I don't know. But I also admitted that our big weakness, and the question that we struggle to answer, is how can a team of people who've never been in government think about going into government? How can a team of people who, if we get elected, on a genuinely radical agenda for change, how are we going to deal with some of the barriers that we might face? They might come from elements of the civil service. They might come from the House of Lords. They might come from teaching unions. How is a team of inexperienced people going to be prepared to go into government? Well, some of you may think even talking about winning the next election, about government, is pie in the sky. But frankly, having led the opinion polls for over 100 opinion polls, the only responsible thing that we can do is to prepare. And that's why I announced at conference we'd be setting up a department preparing for government. And that is the responsible thing that we're going to do. And that process starts today when we take on somebody who will head up that department, find talent, find people with experience in the civil service, in government, and help us get ready for what will be a monumental task. Radical change in a country like this is not easy, but it's necessary, because if it's not done, many of us believe this country will be well and truly sunk. So the man that has been given the job, this enormous responsibility, is a Member of Parliament for East Wiltshire. His name is Danny Kruger, and he joins me, I hope he does, on the stage now.
Thank you very much indeed, Nigel. Good to see you all. I have been variously a member, an activist, an employee of the Conservative Party for over 20 years. And I have many friends in the party, many good and decent people, which is why it is so personally painful for me to be doing what I'm doing today. There have been moments when I've been very proud to belong to the Tory party. In 2010, I was inspired by the big society, by schools reform and welfare reform. I was thrilled by Brexit and by what Boris Johnson pulled off in 2019. But those were exceptions to the rule. The rule of our time in office was failure. Bigger government, social decline, low wages, high taxes, and less of what ordinary people actually wanted. And now our country is entering the most profound set of crises in my lifetime, under a government even worse, far worse, than the one it replaced. Crisis in the economy, crisis at the border, crisis in our streets, crisis in our military, crisis for young people. Yes, we are still a great country, and there are good reasons that so many migrants want to come here. But there are also reasons so many entrepreneurs and young people want to leave. Britain is not broken, but it is badly damaged. And so in this crisis, something's got to give. I hoped after our defeat last year that the Conservative Party would learn the obvious lesson, that the old ways don't work, that centrism is not enough, that real change is needed. But no, we've had a year of stasis and drift and the sham unity that comes from not doing anything bold or difficult or controversial. And the result is in the polls. And those lost voters aren't coming back. And every day more and more people are joining them in deserting the party that has failed. And so this is my tragic conclusion. The Conservative Party is over. Over as a national party. Over as the principal opposition to the left. But I'm not despondent, because conservatism is not over. It's never been needed more, and actually it's never been more vibrant. Because the failure of the Conservative Party has created space for an alternative. The flame is passing from one torch to another. The old torch, once so great, is guttering, spluttering, held weakly in uncertain hands. But the new torch is already alight, already brighter than the one it is replacing, held aloft in firm and confident hands. And while the torch is different, the flame is the same. The things we Conservatives all believe in: respect for the law, respect for our traditions, personal liberty, national sovereignty, free markets, belief in family, community, country, the trinity of obligations that give us identity and security and purpose. And if we strengthen these things, and the economy which supports them, and the armed forces which defend them, we can weather the storms that are coming, and we can make our country even greater. So I am honoured to have been asked by Nigel to work with him, with Zia Youssef, with Richard Tice and our other colleagues to help Reform prepare for government. This is a team with the vision, the energy and the ideas that we need. And so let me say a word about the work that we're going to do. It's going to be difficult because we are planning change on a scale that the system has not seen since the modern civil service was created in the 19th century. And this work is going to be hard, and it will be opposed by the system. And that's why we need to be radical, taking on the vested interests and the incumbents who always defend the status quo. But here's an important thing. Reform UK is a radical force, but not a revolutionary one. Our mission is not just to overthrow the current system. It is to restore the system that we need, limited government, accountable power, a strong society, a state that works in the interests of the people. Radical restoration. That is the reform the country needs. Now, we'll be making a lot of announcements in the months ahead about what we want to do in government and how we'll get there, because this is going to be an open process. The whole point is that no group of politicians has all the answers. And so what I want to say to people watching is this. If you are serious about saving our country, about changing our economy and our society and our government itself, if you have expertise or experience or ideas, and that's everyone, we want your help. If you work in Whitehall or the public sector or the military and you want to give us confidential advice, get in touch. I say this to everyone. If you've had enough of waiting for politicians to fix our problems, if you don't trust Westminster, well, join the club. Literally, join us. Join Reform UK and see what you can do for your country. So let me finish with this. We on the right of politics face a choice: to embrace the change that is happening or to go down to a deserved demise. To follow the flame of conservatism as it passes to a new torch, or to stand still and get darker and colder and more pointless. To be conservative is not to worship the ashes of defunct institutions. It is to preserve the fire that gives our country its life. The new custodian of that fire, the best hope we have, maybe our last hope, and I fervently hope the next Prime Minister, is Nigel Farage. I am proud to follow him, and I hope others will do the same, because Britain needs reform. Thank you.
Well done, Danny. Yes. Okay, thank you very much indeed, Danny. We have a list of questions, as is our tradition, and we're going to begin with Chris Mason from the BBC.
Thank you both. Chris Mason from BBC News. Nigel Farage, are you really in an insurgency? Oh, start again now, I'm in possession of a microphone. Are you really an insurgency or any port in a storm for grumpy Conservatives who think their old party is finished? And Danny Kruger, is the Conservative Party really over? What would you say to former colleagues who will say that you're a turncoat who's given up when the going gets tough? And I appreciate defecting is a big and difficult thing for any politician to do. And just one final question, Mr Farage, if I may. Where did the money come from for the house your partner bought in Clacton?
Okay,
Thank you.
two questions there. I'll deal with that after Danny and I have given the answers to this. We're not here as any port in a storm for Conservatives who think they've got a better chance of winning their seat next time round. There are two things, there are two criteria. Number one is what do these individuals stand for, but more importantly, what are they going to give? What is the benefit to us of them joining? And they're the only ones I have any interest in. In this particular case, Danny Kruger is aligned with us, but whether it's on the Brexit vote, whether it's on the Windsor framework, whether it's on ECHR, politically we're very, very aligned indeed. And he's just taken on a mammoth piece of work, and he's better qualified to do it than any of the rest of us that are in the senior levels of leadership in this party at the moment.
Thank you. Also, Chris, this is a big risk for me. And in fact, my seat is not particularly a Reform target, although Reform are doing well, even in East Wiltshire at the moment. So I don't accept that I'm simply jumping ship to save my skin. In fact, I'm taking a very significant personal risk here. The fact is that I feel nothing changes when the governments change at the moment, and I think that's where the country are too. And what I hoped after the last election is that my party, the Conservatives, would recognise how profound the challenge that they faced is. They haven't done so, and my view now is that the best hope for conservatism and for the country is Nigel's Reform Party. But yes, it is going to be a major challenge, and Nigel's asked me to do a very, very difficult job, so I don't think I'm scuttling off an easy life with this move.
No, that's certainly true. Chris, in answer to your question, my partner is a private individual. She purchased a house in the constituency. I was pleased that she did. I didn't particularly want my name down, living in the constituency for obvious security reasons. Lots of questions were asked, which is why I went last week to an independent KC, tax expert, I've got all the judgment. The KYC checks were done. The money was legal. The purchase was legitimate. The right level of stamp duty was paid. There have been no laws of any kind broken whatsoever. As for the source of the money, I've said previously what I've said, and I'm not going to say any more. Thank you. Chris Hope, GB News.
Thank you. Chris Hope from GB News. Danny Kruger, you're the new Reform UK MP. What has Nigel Farage got that Kevin Badenoch hasn't got as a leader, apart from a big poll lead?
Don't answer that.
Why would he be a better PM than Mrs. Badenoch? And who approached Nigel Farage? Did you approach him or he approached you?
Danny Kruger approached me initially. Well, you know, you meet in the House of Commons, you meet in the voting lobbies, things like that. So to say, where did the direct approach come from? I'm not even sure, to be frank with you, but this is a conversation that has happened between Danny and I, and it's been going on over the course of the summer.
Yeah. Probably started when Lee Anderson defected, however many years ago, actually. That's when the conversation began, but I never thought it was, I didn't think it was the right thing to do until now. And Chris, I think I don't want to make a comparison between Nigel and Kemi. I have great personal regard for her, actually. I think she's done a very, very difficult job with courage and resilience, and I like her personally. I think the problem is the Conservative Party. So any leader that the Conservatives have, I think, would struggle with two essential problems. One is a divided parliamentary party and indeed party in the country. And secondly, a toxic brand. And it's not just a brand problem, it's a real problem. The fact is the country doesn't trust Conservatives because of their record in office over the last 14 years, and particularly the last few years, when, by the way, I was opposing what the Conservative government was doing on migration in particular. So I think that, unfortunately, whatever leader we have, the Conservative Party is finished as the principal opposition to the left. And but the good news is we do have a great alternative in Reform Party, my new colleagues, and in its leader, who I think does have the character and the track record of persistent commitment to the cause and to the interests of the British people that they will be looking for. So I'm very, very pleased to be jumping onto the Nigel Farage machine, but I wish my former colleagues very, very well. I have nothing but personal regard for all of them.
Thank you. Let's go to Liz Bates from Sky News.
Thanks. I was going to say, it sounds like you think the Conservative Party is dead and finished for good, and is that true? But I think we know that already. In terms of your other colleagues, you still have high regard for a lot of them. Do you expect any more of them to come over? Are there more conversations going on? And Mr. Farage, if I could get your response to the scenes that we saw over the weekend, the marches, the presence of Tommy Robinson, and in particular, the comments of Elon Musk, fight or die. What do you make of all of that?
So on the first question, I don't think the Conservative Party is dead. I just think it's over as the principal opposition and the principal vehicle of conservatism, the sort of conservatism that I believe in. And I think in reality, it is very unlikely that they're going to recover significantly or soon. And my personal view is ever. So I'm not predicting that there will never be Conservative Party or Conservative MPs. I would hope that colleagues who share my view about the crisis that the country is in and the opportunity that reform offers to save our country at the next election will follow me. In terms of what conversations are underway, I have absolutely no idea, and that's best left to the leader. Nigel, are there other conversations underway?
Thank you. It's very kind of you. But of course, we keep everything under wraps. I mean, you know, when we have negotiations with people, nothing leaks. None of you had a clue that Danny would be joining us today, and that's how we operate, and that's very much how I operate. A quick thought on the Conservative Party. Whether it is the parrot in the Monty Python sketch, I don't know. What I do know is this Conservative Party has zero chance of winning the next general election. Literally zero chance, but Reform genuinely does, and we've led, as I said earlier, for over 100 opinion polls. As for Saturday, I think the vast majority of people that turned up were good, ordinary, decent people who are very, very concerned about what's happening in this country. I've noticed that the wave of flags that started about 3 weeks ago, going up around the country, far from subsiding, from what I could see this weekend, it's accelerating massively. And it is a collective 2 fingers up to a British establishment that they feel utterly betrayed by in every single way. So I fully understand why people would go and march. The comments of Elon Musk you asked me about. Well, Elon and I have a relationship. Wouldn't say a very good one. He's generally rather rude about me, even though I do admire him in many ways. You know, it would be nice to get some clarification of what fight meant in that context. And I'll link it back to something that Danny said earlier. We are radical, but we're not revolutionaries. If the fight that Musk was talking about was about standing up for our rights of free speech, if it was about fighting in elections to overcome the established parties, then that absolutely is the fight that we're in. And the reason you asked the question, I think the context of the way the word was used left a degree of ambiguity. Thank you. Carl Dinnan, ITV News.
Thanks very much. Danny has just described Reform as being the new home of conservatism. How then are you going to continue to persuade former Labour voters to vote for you, if that is the case? Danny, I'd like to ask you about something you said in your speech. You said, quite explicitly, Britain is not broken. Are you aware that Nigel has spent the whole summer saying that it is? And finally, Nigel, just a quick one. Do you think Peter Mandelson was worth the risk as US ambassador to the United States?
Oh, gosh. We'll be here all day, Carl, just with you, won't we? Look, you can define conservatism how you want. What is for certain, if you look at those by-election results last Thursday, we are doing very well in the old Labour heartlands because they believe in family, community, country, all right? And what people like Danny have been looking for is a brand of conservatism that's consistently been promised and not delivered. And that's the really important point. As to whether Britain is broken or not, Danny's more bullish than me. He's more optimistic than me. But we both agree on one thing. The state the country's in needs radical change. Tinkering at the edges will not make any difference. And as for Mandy, well, you know, clever bloke, good at what he does. I confronted him face to face when he was European Commissioner. There was no doubt the man was a master of a brief. But a totally catastrophic appointment from day one. A huge political error from Keir Starmer, from Morgan McSweeney, and it looks like one or both of them will fall as a result of that judgment. We will find out more over the course of the coming days, but a catastrophic political error. Francis Reed, Channel 4 News.
Thank you very much. Mr. Krueger, you've previously called Reform a destructive force, so I'm wondering what's changed. And secondly, forgive me, you're another Eton boy, Oxbridge graduate. Can you explain to working class voters how you can understand their lives and why it's any different from the Tories? Mr. Farage, you've distanced yourself from Tommy Robinson, but Elon Musk is amplifying him. Will you outright condemn their actions today? And also, what legal means do you think Elon Musk could possibly have in mind in saying that a democratically elected government should be overthrown?
So, Reform is a destructive force. It's destructive of the established parties, and I mean that's
a very good pivot. I like that.
I mean, you like it. I have regretted it, and I do, on a personal level, genuinely regret it because there are some brilliant candidates in my constituency who lost their seats at the council elections to Reform at the council elections earlier this year, and you know the fact is, the landscape is changing dramatically. The brutal reality of a first-past-the-post system, though, is that there's only really space for one major party on the right of politics if we are serious about trying to win power on the right, as we should be. And therefore, as I said, I think the flame has passed to a different torch. So what I don't believe, though, is Reform is destructive of our country. In fact, quite the reverse. As we've heard, we want to restore the foundations of our country, address the parts of our communities that genuinely are broken, restore families, communities, and our country itself. So it's a creative as well as a destructive force, and I'm very proud to be working with it. On your cheap shot about my education, fair enough. None of us can claim to have personal experience of every experience that people in the country have. I recognise that. Nevertheless, I would say partly as a constituency MP, but actually more in the work that I've done outside politics. For 10 years, I ran a charity which I still chair, working in prisons and with ex-prisoners. We work with many families at risk. I'm very, very familiar on a personal level with the challenges that so many people in our country face who have lives very different from mine. And I would hope, and the experience shows, in fact, as happened in 2019, when I was so proud with Boris Johnson's achievement to win genuinely a national vote from people from all different sections of society. The good news is the British people do not have quite the same hang-ups as others about where somebody went to school.
Yeah, we're not bothered about. There's no class prejudice in Reform. There's no racial prejudice in Reform. We don't really care what your sexual preference is or anything else. We couldn't care less about any of it. We're not going to segment people up, but if you're here, you're British, you support the values of this country, you obey the law, you pay your taxes, you're very welcome in our party. And I think one of the things that really shocked people was, without trying to do it, was how diverse our conference was. You know, a real cross-section of society. As far as Mr. Musk's concerned, look, you know, he's been chucking abuse at me now for 6 months, and you want me to return the favour, don't you? Because it's a great headline. I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to abuse Musk or Tommy Robinson or anything. We're going to get on with building what we're trying to build. Thank you very much indeed. Noah Hoffman from The Sun. That's a lot of questions.
Thank you. This is one to you both. Danny was political secretary to Boris Johnson, someone you, Nigel, blame for waves of mass migration. I was just wondering how you both square that circle, please.
Well, I think when the mass migration occurred, Boris was Prime Minister. Danny knows him incredibly well. But I think one of the reasons Danny is here, he's been disappointed by what's been promised at elections and not delivered. I don't hold Danny personally responsible for that mass wave of migration, and quite the opposite. Just look at his voting record.
Thank you. So I was political secretary to Boris in 2019, in those months before the 2019 election, which was when I became an MP. So I was there through the Brexit battles when we were in a minority government and had to try and get Brexit through very, very difficult circumstances. And I remain enormously proud of Boris Johnson for his achievement then. I think he was absolutely the man for the moment. And with help from Nigel and others, he won a great victory at that election, and all credit to him. I was very disappointed with what followed. Firstly, with the failure to properly grip the system of Whitehall itself, which Brexit was only a prelude to. We needed to restore the government to the people. That was what people voted for in 2019, and I think we've failed to do that, particularly during COVID. And then secondly, most obviously, with the wave of immigration that the government oversaw. And while, as a Conservative MP, in a sense, I bear some responsibility for that, in practice, I was arguing strongly against the degree of both legal and illegal migration that the government was presiding over. And I'm on record for having opposed measures that the government was introducing, particularly around the small boat crossings. And I rebelled on the Rwanda deal because I didn't feel it extricated the British government from the snare of the human rights framework that would have prevented Rwanda from working as well as it could have done. It didn't work at all, of course, because Labour scrapped it. But so I think I was on the right side of those arguments in the last Parliament.
OK, Martin Beckford, Daily Mail.
Thank you. Good morning. Could I ask, Danny, one of the things you've been best known for over the past year is opposing the assisted suicide bill. Will your preparations for Reform government include repealing that law, is law by then? And Nigel, would you support him in that? Thank you.
So my quick answer to that is we'll wait and see. The manifesto is still to be written. Zia Youssef is leading on policy development. It's a free vote in the House of Commons, questions around assisted dying. And I think that's probably the right framework for it. Nevertheless, and I defer to Nigel here, I think it is appropriate for the parties to take the way laws are framed seriously. And I have very significant concerns with the way the assisted dying law has been framed, actually with the support of the Labour government. So it might well be appropriate that the party takes a position, but the reality is our MPs are split on this question like the country is. Yeah. So I don't think that it's likely that we're going to be imposing a position on principle on assisted dying on our colleagues.
Not unless it's become legislation and we can see it's going horrendously wrong. But you know, we haven't even got through the House of Lords stage with this yet, and there are many who support the principle who now have grave reservations. Unlikely to be a major party political issue, I would have thought, at the next general election, but an issue of conscience, certainly. Jonathan Walker, Daily Express.
Hello. Danny, what sort of problems do you expect Reform to face if they do form a government? Do you think the civil service are ready for a Reform government? Will they work with Nigel and his team? And Nigel, can I just ask you, these TikTok messages, are they just an annoyance or are they a genuine concern to you?
So on the civil service, thank you. I think we're going to encounter serious opposition. And part of the purpose of today and the work that we're going to be doing quite publicly in the months and years to come is to be signalling very clearly to the system what is coming. And we want to do that in a civil, constructive way. We don't want to pick fights where we don't need to, but it is essential that the Whitehall machine understands that if we win, there will be change. And what that will look like, we'll be talking about more in the period ahead. But I think there will be opposition, but I am determined that we do this in a way that is constructive. And there will be many civil servants who will actually, I hope, I'm confident, and my experience of the civil service is this, there are many people, often quite quiet people, often not at the very most senior ranks, who recognise how broken the system is and who will want to help us. So I think it's very, very important that we signal to those people. We're not out to get everybody. And we want to work constructively with those parts of the machine that recognise that a system designed in the 19th century is no longer remotely fit for purpose. We need a much leaner, much more efficient, much more open central apparatus that is properly accountable to elected politicians. And so when people vote for a change in government, they actually get a change in government, not just a change of ministers.
Quite. Look, I knew Charlie Kirk for virtually 10 years, knew him pretty well, campaigned around America with him, spoke at Turning Point conferences. You know, I knew the guy very, very well, and obviously deeply upset by what happened. Some of the reaction to it was vile. Vile. But if you believe in free speech, you have to allow people to say distasteful things. But equally, if you believe in free speech, you believe there are limits to free speech. An incitement to kill, I would have thought, I know, is way beyond what even a free speech champion such as myself thinks is acceptable. And yes, these were aimed at me personally. I mean, look, it's not a very pleasant experience, let's put it like that. And so I did challenge the police to do something, but they've decided this does not meet the threshold. Gosh, imagine if I'd made some joke about the trans community. I'd probably be in real trouble. And that is at the heart of two-tier Britain, two-tier policing, two-tier justice, and two-tier care. And it's one of the reasons the flags are going up all over this country. The public have sussed it. The government is not on the side of ordinary, decent, working people. Thank you. We move on to Tony Diver from The Telegraph.
Thank you. Danny, can I ask you, until this morning you were a Tory frontbencher, you were in charge of representing your party in Parliament. When did you tell Kemi Badenoch that you intended to defect, or did you leave her to find out on television this morning? And can I also ask, you previously said that Robert Jenrick was the man who could win voters back from Reform. Do you no longer think that he can? And if you don't mind briefly, just to Nigel, Danny's twice here asked civil servants and military officials to give advice to Reform. Are you asking people to break their oaths of confidentiality to the government and leak you information about what's going on inside government and the military? Or perhaps do you already have people doing that?
So on the first question, I informed the Chief Whip this morning before coming out here today, and in the proper way. But no, I didn't want to put any of my colleagues in a difficult position of asking them to keep any sort of secret for me before we did this. And so that's that. On the what was the second part of your question? Robert Jenrick. Well, I have a great personal respect and regard for Rob, and obviously supported his leadership campaign last year. I wish that he had won because I think he would have done things differently. I think he would have taken the fight to Labour immediately rather than Kemi's strategy, which is a respectable one, by the way. It's understandable why she chose to do it, which was to, as it were, disappear from public view for a year or two while the Conservative Party sorted out what it thought. But that hasn't worked. And so I think Rob's strategy would have been to be much more energetic and deliberate and making some clear policy positions at the outset about the ECHR, which I think is in a sense the totemic one that shows seriousness about the changes we need. There would have been a major battle in the Conservative Party to do that, and it might have been that he wouldn't have been able to do so. This is my problem about the divided party. So in answer to your question, do I think that Rob could succeed? I don't think he could succeed in overtaking Reform now. think who knows what would have happened if he'd won last year, but I think now it is too late. And so I wish all my former colleagues well on a personal level, but as I say, I think the Conservative Party is unable to deliver for Conservatives.
Since I made that announcement at conference on the 5th and 6th of September to say we're going to be setting this department up, I've had a lot of people contact me, mostly those from the military or the civil service that have quite recently left, and one or two in very senior positions, who've no desire to go public but genuinely want to help because they see what the problems are. We're not encouraging people to break their oaths or break the law or be whistleblowers, but my impression is there are many working within the system who are frankly in despair. So if people come forward with valuable information that helps us to craft a policy, we will certainly accept it.
Yeah, and let me emphasise, we're seriously not encouraging people to break oaths or to, as it were, sort of betray the government they work for. On the contrary, they should do their job as well as they can. But we do want advice on how to fix the system itself. So it's not about policy, and certainly not about any kind of official secrets about what the government's doing, what ministers are doing. It's about what is your advice to us on how we should structure Whitehall and how we should arrange the apparatus of government in the most effective way. And that's something that only people who have either working currently or have worked in it can do.
Exactly. And that's our weakness, and you're coming here to help us fill that. Max Kendick from The Times.
Thank you. Nigel Farage, this is the first sitting MP defection since the election. You had five MPs just after the election. You're back on 5 now. How many MPs will you have by the end of the Parliament?
What a good question.
And Danny Kruger, you were a big supporter of Boris Johnson. Are you still a big ally of Boris? Should he make a return and should he come to reform?
I've no idea what by-elections will come up over the course of this Parliament. Undoubtedly, there's only been one so far, which is quite surprising, which is Runcorn, of course. So, I mean, we will look forward to future parliamentary by-elections. We will do our absolute best to win them. Whether we'll be up against Mr. Burnham in one of them, I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what the future brings. And I think there will be more colleagues who have sat with Danny that join us. Are we in conversation with some of them? Yes. But as I say, we've got a couple of bars here that have to be cleared. Number one, we have to see that they genuinely, in policy terms, are with us. And secondly, that they're coming not for a meal ticket, but to add to our movement, to add to our party and what we are trying to do.
Yes, I mean, I hope others will join, and I hope everyone will stay. Lee Anderson just said to me when he saw that it was me, he said, "So which one of us is leaving? Because it's 1 in, 1 out." So I hope that is not, I hope that trend has stopped, Lee, with this. We need to grow. On Boris, I mean, I genuinely have great personal regard and respect for what he achieved as the cheerleader for Brexit in 2016, and as I think the only man who actually had the courage and the style and the conviction to kick the door down, as he did in 2019, to get the deal and get Parliament to back an election and then to go on to win such an astounding victory in 2019. So I will always revere Boris for his achievement in that period. I'm afraid to say I think subsequently as Prime Minister he failed, and he's part of the failure of the Conservative record in the last Parliament. And I think he has many decent excuses, COVID being the most obvious one, but fundamentally you have to be accountable for your record in this business. And so my view is that he's probably not one of the people on Nigel's invitation list for reform.
Yeah. A drink, perhaps, but not to join Reform. James Hill, Spectator.
Thank you very much. Danny, you were integral to Robert Jenrick's leadership campaign last summer. Just off the back of Tony's question, can you categorically rule out ever rejoining the Conservative Party if Robert Jenrick does become leader in the future?
Oh, I mean, blimey, I've just made one move. Don't ask me to anticipate the next one. I mean, my strong prediction is that the Conservative Party is going to continue to shrink in public opinion and in parliamentary size. And I want to be part of the party that can actually achieve change for this country. So, I mean, my absolute commitment now is to Nigel and to Reform. I'm not going to speculate on what might happen in the Conservative Party. It's no longer my business. And, and I can't imagine what might happen down the line.
The Conservative Party, James, is nowhere near its electoral floor. There are still people out there who don't really engage in politics much, who have companies and jobs and families and kids and mortgages, and they think, well, you know, I'll tell the pollster I'm voting Conservative because I don't like what Labour's doing. But when they realise that actually it's only Reform that can beat Labour, then you'll see whatever they're polling at now, is it 16, 17 or something like that, that will go lower. And the other point I think is this, that the stakes next May are very, very high, with the Welsh, Scottish, Greater London, thousands of council seats. My prediction is that after next May, the Conservative Party will cease to be a national party because they're going to get obliterated in Scotland and best part obliterated in Wales. Moving on to Chris McKeon, PA.
Thanks. Mr. Krueger, you said that the public no longer trust the Conservatives after 14 years of failure, but we've seen a succession of former Conservative ministers join Reform UK, so why should they trust Reform UK? And Mr. Farage, you described some of the majority of the people marching on Saturday as good and decent people, but we've also heard from ethnic minority Britons who were afraid to go out in central London on Saturday. Does that concern you at all?
On the question of trust in reform, I mean, I think it's a very legitimate challenge to Nigel and his colleagues about why people should trust them. And their job is to demonstrate that they can be trusted. On a personal level, you know, they've never been in government before, so they haven't got a track record to defend. Nigel himself has a tremendous track record of consistent commitment to the causes that he has stood for. He doesn't get shaken. And I think people can trust him as a person because they know who he is and they know what he stands for. And despite everything that gets thrown at him, and sometimes he hasn't been doing so well in the polls, he still remains the same. And I think that is what the public fundamentally look to. And what myself and former colleagues have done in joining him is they're coming to join the Reform Party. And what we are doing today is announcing a process of getting serious as a government in waiting. We're not being arrogant, certainly not hubristic about the expectation of winning. We're ahead in the polls. Doesn't mean that's going to stay that way. We're not predicting victory, but we are anticipating victory, and we are doing the responsible thing, as Nigel said earlier, of ensuring that if we are fortunate enough to win the support of the public, we will be ready with a plan. And I think that is going to be the crucial thing that convinces the public that when they change ministers, they're actually going to get a change of government. So it won't be a series of sound bites in a manifesto. It'll be a properly worked out plan with a serious legislative programme and a programme of change in the system itself. And I hope that that will convince serious-minded voters, including just in the mainstream, in the centre of politics, who want to get shot of this failing Labour government, that you can rely on reform.
I didn't come out of semi-retirement last year for fun. I didn't come out of semi-retirement for a career. I came out of it because I genuinely believe that unless we get radical change, that we are headed for a very, very bleak future. And I think the sheer number of 30-somethings that are now leaving this country because they want to get on, they want to build a business, they want to make money, and they're fleeing, is just one little illustration of how much trouble we're in. So we're doing this not because we want to hold high offices of state. We're doing this because we believe we're the only people that can bring the change that is needed. As for the march again on Saturday, look, if some people were offended by it or felt worried by it, then that is a great shame. I'll tell you what's even worse, the fact that over 50% of women don't feel safe walking the streets of London. Can you believe that in our capital city? Can you believe it? And by the way, that's not just at night time. It includes during daytime too. Righty-ho, Eleanor Wheatley from Guido Fawkes. We're rattling through here.
Nigel, what is your view on the Royal College of Defence Studies banning Israeli military personnel?
The Royal College of
Defence Studies banning Israeli military personnel?
Well, I don't think we should be doing that. And I think, you know, we've always been a great ally of Israel. It doesn't mean we support every single thing they do, far from it. But I just see, it seems to me that criticism of Israel, criticism of the Israeli army, criticism of I suppose, Zionism, and quite where that merges with outright anti-Semitism is perhaps a bigger intellectual debate than we can have right here, right now. But it does seem to me that all the pressure is heading in that direction. There's almost a competition between the Greens, the Liberal Democrats, Labour, whatever Jeremy's going to call his outfit, almost a competition for who can be the most beastly. And, you know, it's interesting. going back to the previous question the PA asked, there's an awful lot of Jewish people scared to go out on the streets, given the situation we're in. So, look, we should be critical friends of Israel. You might say deeply critical of some of the things they've done, but they're in a very, very tight spot. OK, Jay Merrick, the iPaper.
Thank you. First of all, to Danny, this is quite a journey for you, isn't it? You wrote David Cameron's Hug a Hoodie speech in 2006. Do you still take that approach to crime, that basically criminals need a bit more love? And to Nigel, which Labour leader would be easier for Reform to beat at the next election, Keir Starmer or Andy Burnham?
So I'm very proud of the Hug a Hoodie speech, and that's because it's a very conservative speech. And if you go back and have a look at it, it says something very clear, which is that while people are growing up, they need the support of a loving family and a loving community around them. And that includes, you know, it was during a kind of scare around young people wearing hoods going into shopping centres and so on. And often it is plainly the case that these are good kids underneath. But what we also said in that speech, what David Cameron was very insistent that we said, and of course I support him, is that when people cross the line into criminality or antisocial behaviour, they need to feel the full force of the law. And as we discipline our children, clearly we need to discipline young people in general. So I think it was a conservative speech. It got unfairly caricatured by Andy Coulson, who was the political editor at the time. Anyway, what I learned from that is you can only get one idea in a headline. So you can't say two different things, even if they're complementary and compatible. So there we are. Over to you.
Yeah, good point. Who we fear most at the next general election, Keir or Andy B? It's a very hypothetical question, and you know that. Keir Starmer will not be leader of the Labour Party at the next election. In fact, he might not even last the next year. Look, you know, if it's Andy Burnham, you might say he's very personable, but he also would drag Labour way to the left. And that's not the direction the centre of gravity in this country is going. It's going in a different direction. And it's almost as if Westminster now is more... This current Parliament is so far detached from where the country is going that it's almost not true. So I'm not bothered, is really the answer to that. Noah Keat from Politico.
Thank you very much. You spoke about coming in to take over, to head up reforms, preparing for government department, and I wondered how much your focus specifically will be on foreign policy and Britain's place with the rest of the world. And on that, I wondered what you thought about Donald Trump finally calling Russia the aggressor in the war against Ukraine, and whether that makes any kind of peace deal more or less likely. Thank you.
Well, to answer your question, not really, except insofar as the international entanglements that we are in are a block to the execution of the government's agenda. So I am very concerned how governments of both stripes in our country feel so constrained by what Foreign Office lawyers tell them they're allowed to do. So I think we need to free ministers to pursue foreign policy as an independent sovereign country should. And in terms of what President Trump has said about Russia, I mean, I feel that it's a recognition of the reality that he's made there. I think he is attempting, as he should, as the leader of the West, to broker a peace in Ukraine, and he is right to recognise that the fundamental aggressor in that conflict is Putin, but we're only going to get peace if Putin agrees to it. So I think he's treading a very difficult line, but I'm glad to see that he's recognised what is obviously the case, which is that Russia is responsible for this war.
Well, Trump, of course, is not a neocon. Not a president that wants to launch endless wars that Britain tends to get dragged into. And he wants to promote peace, which is good. I think he genuinely believed that he could get Putin to the table to have a rational conversation. I think it's become increasingly clear that that is just not the case. Hence the very, very high tariffs on India, etc. So, no, I think, pretty much, as Danny says, Trump's just facing reality. He was the aggressor to begin with. He continues to be the aggressor. It's perfectly clear. He just doesn't want peace. Right, three more. Anna Gross, Financial Times.
Danny, for you first. Are you going to trigger a by-election in your seat? Is it not fair to offer your constituents the choice of whether they want a Reform MP representing them in Parliament? Nigel, you've got a reputation as a candid, straight-talking politician. You told The Mirror that your partner, Laura Ferrari, bought the house in Clacton with her own family money. Are you willing to repeat that today, or do you want to correct the record and say you gave her a gift or a loan to pay for that house?
So on the by-election, let Nigel answer the question, because it's in a sense a party policy one about whether by-elections will be triggered if MPs join Reform. But on a personal level, let me emphasise I intend to continue to do my job as an MP in exactly the way that I've done since I was elected last year. I'm going to oppose this terrible Labour government. I'm going to speak up for Conservative principles, and I'm going to represent my constituents as a good local MP should. So the job hasn't changed, I haven't changed, and I will continue to do it in exactly the same way. Nigel.
I don't think Danny's going to change any politics whatsoever. He'll vote the same way, he'll think the same way. He just happens to see that we are the vehicle through which he can achieve the things that he wants to see for the country, not the current failing Conservative Party. I think, I mean, to be honest with you, if he joined from the Labour Party, if he'd been elected on a Labour manifesto and come, then I think perhaps in that situation, the voters in the constituency would say, well, hang on, surely we've got the right to have a say on this. Generally, the public don't like by-elections. Generally, the public don't like being asked to vote if they think it's unnecessary. And just as we've had defections in Wales, we've had defections in Scotland, and here, no, there's no need for by-elections. Other parties don't do them either. Be slightly careful what you say. There's no loan being made of any kind, because that really would raise very serious questions. I've answered the question earlier on to Chris Mason. You know, I spent the money to get an independent King's Council tax advisor last week to say everything that has been done is legal, but I'm not going to say any more. And I would advise people not to say in print or anywhere else that I have done something to break the law when it comes to stamp duty. I would advise that quite strongly. Penultimate question, Archie Mitchell, Independent.
Hello. Mr. Krueger, in the past you've said that marriages between men and women are the only possible basis for a safe and successful society. Is that something you stand by, Nigel? Is that something that you welcome in Reform?
I think one thing for certain is children who have two stable parents have a better chance in life, and the most stable relation, well, maybe not my example, but the most stable relationships, the ones that last the longest, tend to be between men and women. I'm not absolutist about this in any way at all. I do just happen to think there's an awful lot of kids in the country not getting the kind of start at home or at school that they deserve. Last question, Aletha Adu from The Guardian.
Mr. Krueger, last month I asked Mr. Farage about the costs of his mass deportation plans, because what he was floating as something that could amount to around £10 billion, near identical plans had also been floated as costing at about £47.5 billion. Do you take back your remarks that Reform will spend money like drunken sailors? And now that you're in this position, do you think that you'll be able to stop Reform and your colleagues from making jokes and simply saying, you know, we can get these plans done because Zaya Youssef is good at maths? And Mr. Farage, rather, what is your direct message to police officers, 26 of those who were left injured at this weekend's rallies? You are levelling some heavy accusations at them, those who are trying to do their jobs, that they are conducting two-tier policing, but how is this helpful to them?
Yeah, I mean, 26 police officers being injured is horrendous. And people will say it's not as bad as Notting Hill, it's not as bad as other demonstrations, but it is horrible, it is bad. I feared something like that would happen. There is no defence of the use of violence that some people used on Saturday, but I do repeat, not defending any of it, but I do repeat, the vast majority of those who caught the train to London for the day were good, ordinary, decent people.
Just on the point about Reform spending plans, firstly, I do have great confidence in Zia Youssef's ability to put together a comprehensive and workable plan, and part of what we intend to do over the coming months is to involve the public and experts as much as possible in the development, both of policy and of implementation. So I have absolute confidence that we currently have and will have fully costed, highly workable plans. On the point about spending, my objection to Reform's position a few months ago was on their welfare policy, when, as Shadow Welfare Minister for the Conservatives, I was encouraging restrictions in DWP spending. What I'm glad to say is that at Reform's party conference a couple of weeks ago, Nigel, from the main stage, committed the party to welfare reform. It is completely unsustainable that we are spending so many tens of billions of pounds more every year on benefits. So in order to support low-income families, in order to ensure that people get opportunities to work and to ensure that families are supported, we do need to reform the benefit system. I'm very glad that that's the position that Nigel is in.
We will do a press conference next week at which we will show you how we propose to save huge amounts of money. And that'll be next week, probably Monday, but we'll see. That concludes the press conference. Thank you very much, everybody. Danny, welcome on board. Well done. Great.